the ground at the 48. Hewlett over the ball. Snap back. He's into it. Line drive. End over end. The kick is up, and it is. And it is good. Ken York hit the field goal from 58 yards out with 8 seconds left to go in the ball game.
That's why they drafted Cade York in the 4th round. We said, get him into the 4th.
That's right. The streak is over. One of the worst anti-streaks in NFL history has finally come to an end. A 17-year itch with Cade York's 58-yard field goal completing a 26-24 win for the Cleveland Browns over the Carolina Panthers. And we're here to review that for you all, alongside as well a preview of the Jets game for week 2 with Jets UK podcast. They'll be on a little later on. But first of all, I'm joined with 2 of my fellow Believelanders here. First of all, Sean, I don't need to ask as to how you were with the win, mate. I saw you yesterday for that, but just for everybody else's amusement, how was the win for you?
Do you know what? It was marvellous, mate. And it was made even sweeter by the fact that we were gate crashing a Bengals UK meet-up at the same time, which obviously didn't have quite the same happy ending. So yeah, it was a really, really fun night. Good win. Made it a lot closer than it needed to be. Having to rewatch it today. I was getting caught up in some of the euphoria of it all yesterday. But yeah, good win nonetheless, and looking forward to getting into it, mate.
Absolutely. And our man in Wales wasn't able to join us for that meetup, but I assume that you had just as much fun from where you were.
Yeah, I'm not sure about fun. I think it got the heart rate going, especially at the end. I thought that we were going to be on the wrong end of a big chunk of irony, and Baker was going to get his 2-minute drive, game-winning drive, and yeah, there's some field goal in it. Like, gives you a nice feeling that if we get close in games now, no matter from what distance it seems, that we're going to have a chance to claw it back right to the end.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that I was the same as you guys, very much in that aspect, because you're comfortable almost, 2 scores up, and then Baker obviously pulls it straight back to make it a 1 score, and then you think it's the 4th quarter. No, it doesn't happen. This doesn't happen, and then it started to happen. But yeah, let's get a full rundown of this game before we go into it, chaps. So obviously the scoreline 26-24 in the end. There were 2 Kareem Hunt touchdowns and Cade York kicking through 4 field goals, including the game-winning almost buzzer beater. There was still 8 seconds on the clock from 58 yards, which was the longest of the day. On offense, 138 passing yards and 217 rushing yards. Jacoby Brissett with 18 from 34 for 147 and a TD, and only giving up 1 sack. Best receiver out there was DPJ, 6 from 11 and 60 yards. The main talking point, and I'm sure we'll get to, is the running game. Chubb with 22 touches for 141 yards at an average of 6.4. Hunt had himself a pretty good day as well. 11 touches for 46 yards, a TD, and an average of 4.2. Not to mention his 4 from 4 in the air, 24 yards and a touchdown. Defensively, 207 passing yards given up to Baker Mayfield and 54 on the ground. In what many are probably thinking should have maybe been the other way around, considering they've got Christian McCaffrey. But anyway, Mayfield was 16 from 27, 235, a TD and an int, 4 sacks and 4 fumbles. Not that he lost any of them. He was able to recoup all of them. Yeah, let's get into it with... I mean, we could talk this to death. There are so many different aspects. We don't, unfortunately, have that kind of time. We only have an hour. So let's go around the horn and give our main aspect, the biggest key to the game here. Sean, let's kick off with you, mate.
Yeah, for me, it was the running game. We sort of, at the end of last week, you did us some prop bets, didn't you? And I think a few of us were on the under for the Nick Chubb rushing yards because we felt that potentially Carolina had absolutely stacked the box, almost dare us to run, and we saw plenty of examples last year, didn't we, where that was essentially what teams wanted us to try and do. And, we did have some difficulty doing that at times last year. But yesterday, it clicked. Very, very few negative runs. I can't remember us sort of suffering too many tackles for loss. It didn't feel as though we were ever really massively behind the chains, consistently, popping 4 or 5 yards on most of the runs. I thought the two-headed monster was fantastic. Got the split of the carries right, at least, in terms of 2/3 for Chubb and a third for Kareem Hunt. It was basically perfect symmetry for that. And I thought both of them ran extremely well. Chubb in particular, he runs to the outside. He just seems to know when he's got that corner, doesn't he? And he just puts his foot in the ground and turns it upfield, and all of a sudden, before you know it, he's 15 yards down the field, and the chains have been moved again. But I thought in particular, it was the offensive line that actually opened up those holes and did an incredibly good job. I don't know what you guys feel, and I don't know how we react to it, but I think that Jack Conklin's got a bit of a job on to get back in this side, because James Hudson's last 2 starts now have been incredibly impressive at the right tackle position. I know when he came in at the start of last year and Jedrick Wills was obviously having his injury issues, he looked, quite ropey on the left-hand side. Obviously hadn't played much of the position in college when we took him on. He was always viewed as a little bit of a prospect, so to speak. But I think at right tackle, he's really, really looked the business, and he seemed to be moving the line of scrimmage positively from our perspective several times yesterday. Thought he in particular was excellent. Always love to see the pulling plays with Batonio and Teller. You can always good when you get the angle from behind the play. That they always obviously show you in the replay afterwards, and you can see the athleticism of those guys. They really do like to get the noses dirty when it comes to the run game, which is excellent. But overall, as a team, 5.6 yards a carry, 5.68 carry. And that's what I say. It was just brilliant to watch, because ultimately, I can't remember us having many 3 and outs, if we had any 3 and outs at all. I could be wrong on that. I'm sure you'll correct me, but I can't remember too many. That's for sure. And we did seem to be able to sustain drives by and large. That's why we obviously go into a position.
I think there was one. I can recall one. There was a couple of 6 and outs.
Yeah, I think when you consider what the offense is going to be for this first 10, 11 weeks, I'll take that. I'll take that. We had several 3 and outs last year. We had several times that you thought, we could go and ice the game here if we could just run some clock, and, we'd end up off the field in 3 plays. And, that didn't seem to happen yesterday. I thought we controlled the game in terms of the time of possession. Realistically, the only bad thing is that this game shouldn't have been as close as it ultimately ended up being. It shouldn't have took that 58-yarder to win it. I'm sure that one of you two will pick up on the defense shortly. But I just thought the run game was absolutely fantastic yesterday. Everything that we want it to be. And if we want to be competitive this year, everything it's going to need to be as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that first. I was actually pleasantly surprised by the way in which we seem to know our identity early on offense. In that it's going to be ugly, and we're going to have to do a lot of it on the ground, but we can execute. Now, I was surprised that Carolina didn't start to stack up the box at any point. At no point did Carolina decide to put an extra man in that box. They stuck to about 6, and they backed themselves to not get drawn into allowing a ball upfield, even though, judging by how Jacoby Brissett was still trying the odd high ball, high and outside, and not getting it done. That should have given you the confidence to be able to put 1 or 2 extra in the box. It didn't happen, and Stefanski and co obviously saw that and thought, well, fine, we'll just continue to run it at you, and it worked. This was the kind of game that we were begging for last year. In how many running touches was there? 33, and that's just from the two main runners. There was also a few gadget play runs as well. I thought that they used Anthony Schwartz quite well in a gadget player mode. Those 2 runs for 20 yards. That's the sort of play of which I would fully expect to see Anthony Schwartz take part in a lot more of. The fact that he actually got a catch as well and can prove that he actually has hands is is a very much an added bonus. Owain, I know that you've probably been more cautious than most in terms of the offensive side. There was obviously a lot to be cautious about here. What did you make of it overall?
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty much as we expected it to. I don't think there was an awful lot different to what we've been talking about over the last couple of months. I thought Brissett was obviously very limited in what he could execute. I think, we talk about the game shouldn't have been as close. I think we could have been out of sight in the first half. If he'd have hit on the one to Cooper at the sidelines, and then he had DPJ wide open on a post which he turned down, missed Kareem Hunt that overthrew him down the left sideline, and then obviously I think he got bailed out a little bit by that pass interference call, which I still can't quite get my head around what that DB was trying to achieve there. The safe for me, if he doesn't touch Cooper, the safety does get that picked, and they avoid obviously the 7 points that started the game off for us. But look, the run game was really, really good yesterday. Like Sean said, I think Hudson played really, really well yesterday again. And you look at it, it wasn't the easiest game. You looked at the matchup there before the game yesterday. It wasn't the easiest matchup for him either. He had Brian Burns staring down at him, the whole game. And Brian Burns is one of the best edges in the league. I firmly believe that. So he performed really, really well yesterday. And it's encouraging going forward. Obviously, Conklin, some thought he may get cut in this past summer. Didn't end up happening. But obviously, as we get to this Watson contract and what that's going to cost us down the line, having Hudson there on a cheap deal, that could be really, really important looking forward. So, yeah, it was really encouraging to see Hudson play that well. The O-line as a whole, I thought, gave Brissett loads of time. We looked last year and Baker looked really jumpy in the pocket. He seemed like he didn't have much time to throw at times. We look at it yesterday, and then it maybe tells you that he was putting himself into a lot of trouble as well, because Brissett seemed to have ages in the pocket for the most part. Never really thought that he was getting pressured. Obviously, that's come up on the stats today that I think we gave up, one pressure in the whole game.
Yeah, it was one sack. That's all that we given up. There was a couple of times where he was pressured to move out. I think that there were about 3 times where he felt that he needed to step out and scramble, but that was of his own volition. That was after about 5 seconds.
Yeah, so I think that illustrates how well the offensive line played in pass protection, let alone what they did in the run game. Obviously, Chubb had his way. Hunt had obviously the few flashes that he had were really, really important to winning that game. Obviously, looked good out of the backfield as a pass catcher again, like he always does. He cooked that DB down the left hand side in the first half, and if Brissett just put a little bit less on that ball, I think we'd have been celebrating a long Kareem Hunt touchdown pass, which would have been really nice looking play actually. So.
Yeah, there was a couple of those, wasn't there? There was a couple of those. You looked at Amari Cooper, for example, in the first half, I think it was, where realistically, if he takes 2-3 yards off that pass, and it's reservations for 6, and that shows you just how close it actually is.
Yeah, and I don't think he needed, looking at the replays to it, he didn't need to put as much air as he did on it. 2, he didn't need to wait as long because Cooper absolutely cooked the DB off the line. So he had instant separation. He just needed to drill one, 5-10 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he was in for a touchdown. I think looking at it yesterday, Amari Cooper gave me a lot of confidence. Obviously, his stat line will be next to nothing. But realistically, he could have put up decent numbers yesterday. He should have had 2 touchdowns if Brissett hit him twice. And he just seemed to be open a lot, which is really encouraging. Obviously, we spoke at length about this wide receiver room. I think we all still probably have concerns about it past DPJ and Cooper. But looking at those 2 yesterday, I was really encouraged what they brought to the party.
Yeah. Can I just give an appreciation shout out to Donovan Peoples-Jones?
Yeah.
He was, for me, he was one of the players of the game just because he was always clutch. He seems to have, in this one game, his brand for this season seems to be, I'm the dependable guy. He's playing almost like the Landry role last year where anybody else could be covered. DPJ could have a man on him, just give me the ball. I think so. He made six catches from 11. I think that 5 of those 6 are contested.
Yeah,
He's got a guy on him. The ball's high or the ball's wide. He's bringing it in. He's getting the feet down. I think that he had an injustice having to be the wide receiver 1 towards the end of last year. And I think he's going to flourish in this role, especially if this is the offense which is going to be plugged in at the start of the season. If you need someone that's going to be dependable in short yardage situations while Cooper's burning a DB down the sideline, I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to end up getting a lot of yards this season.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the stats, I'm not 100% sure of this, but it felt like a lot of those DPJ were third down conversions as well. I'm not sure how many of them actually were, but they were really important catches, and they weren't easy for the most part as well. A lot of them were diving, low grabs, and yeah, they were so important to the way that game went yesterday.
Absolutely. Right, we've spoken about the offense, and we've gotten a little bit of positivity out the offense. I'll take that all day. Owain, I believe that you're going to talk to us about how the defense played.
Yeah, and I think you've got to start with how the pass rush affected that game. I think there was a definitely an effort from the Panthers to get the ball out early and often in the first half. And the Browns knew it as well. You could see the game plan from the Browns coming in. If they weren't going to get pressure on Baker, they were going to put their hands up and deflect those passes, which were really important early on. And then as the game, grew and Baker decided to take a little bit longer on the ball, Myles Garrett, Clowney, Jordan Elliott, who ends up, I think, top 5 pressure rate for the week as a D tackle. We've obviously spoken at length about the defensive tackle room and that being a concern over the off season, but Jordan Elliott starts the season on fire, and it takes a little while for these defensive tackles to come into the league and find their feet. And, a lot of the time people tend to say that it's the third season that defensive tackles start to show why they were drafted. And I think Jordan Elliott definitely showed that yesterday. Obviously, he was in elite company yesterday. Aaron Donald finished first for pressure rate. But I think if I'm not mistaken, that Elliott was only like 2 or 3% behind, which is incredible, really, if you're thinking about it. So obviously one game sample size for the season, but if he can continue at any sort of level like that, that would be incredibly encouraging for us going forward. But yeah, Myles looked like he had the bit between his teeth yesterday, and I think the defense as a whole for me played really, really well. Obviously, the game ends up being close because of 2 coverage busts. But if you're looking at it, if 90%, 97% of the defensive plays yesterday went as well as they did, that's encouraging for me, because I have confidence that those 2 or 3 plays get eradicated quite quickly. I think it reminded me a little bit of the Vikings game last season, where first half you couldn't see where any points were coming from the Panthers. They couldn't get anything at all going. And yeah, apart from 2 or 3 coverage busts, I think that defense looked really good yesterday, and it's going to have to be going forward.
Yeah, I do wonder if it's a case of being overconfident in your pass rush. There's been a few games across a number of seasons now where the Browns get really into the pass rush. They get a lot of success from it, especially in the first 2 quarters. And then second half, you start seeing big pass plays off the back of it because the offensive line holds for one play. And if you're committing 7 or 8 to the box and you're playing a nickel formation, and the the wideouts able to just get by your safety, you almost likely getting a touchdown off it. It's happened quite a lot with the Browns, especially under Joe Woods. I'm just wondering as to whether or not it's a case of, especially when defending a lead, you go back into those 3-4s and you start to take a look at potentially just pumping the brakes a little bit on being so aggressive. I felt like towards the end of the game, we didn't need to attack Carolina's line as heavy as we did. Maybe is that just me being overly cautious with a lead there, or?
I think Baker definitely grew into the game when he started to find a little bit of a rhythm towards the end of the first half. You knew after watching 4 seasons of him play that that's the type of situation he thrives in. When he hits a couple of passes, then the next couple of passes are going to be decent as well. So I think there was an element of that. They definitely got caught. I think they got caught with 10 men on the field, I believe, for the first coverage bust just before half time. I think Ward stepped off the field, and we got caught quite badly with a tight end running the streak down the middle. So, yeah, it's just for me there was just little communication errors on that first one. You can see John Johnson calling Ward back onto the field. There was obviously something that's gone on there, whether Ward was banged up or something was said where Ward felt like he needed to get off the field. Just little communication problems like that. You can see obviously on the Anderson touchdown as well. I think it's Newsome and John Johnson both take DJ Moore on the out route, and then nobody's covering Robbie Anderson. So I don't know whether it's as much that they're relying on the pass rush so much, or that it's just early season. And the communication has obviously let them down on a couple of occasions, which were very costly.
Anything to add there, Sean? Or
no, I think it's been covered very, very well there. I think I don't like taking statistics out of a final stat line, but those 2 busted coverages cost us 125 yards on those 2 plays. If you look at Baker's numbers, he finishes with 235. You take those 125 away, it's a very, very good defensive performance. I think they built on what they were putting together in terms of the back end of last season. It looks more of a unit in terms of the way that they're playing collectively. Obviously, a little bit of a shame to have 2 big busted coverages. Obviously, the Thomas one led to essentially the McCaffrey touchdown. Didn't he got it down to the 1 or the 2 yard line. And obviously the Robbie Anderson one goes to the house, as we know. So, a couple of things to tidy up there. But I thought in general terms, look, the biggest thing for all of us headed into this, I think we're all quite confident with our secondary. I think it was the run defense that we're really worried about. The run defense, yes, it was fantastic. We talked a lot about pressure, all right, but actually just the run defense as a whole was phenomenal yesterday. McCaffrey, 10 carries for 33 yards. You just snapped your hands off before the game for a stat line like that. Absolutely snapped your hands off. It was, an incredible performance, really. I think it was 54 yards rushing as a team or something like that for the Panthers. Was it 54? Yeah, compared to 217. And that's why I said earlier, if you look at that time of possession, it's 38.5 minutes to 21.5 minutes. That means your pass rushers stay fresh. That means you get Myles Garrett on the field seemingly for every play. Which makes a huge difference, even if he's not necessarily going to be instrumental in the play. The fact that he's there, teams game plan against him, try and run the play the opposite direction to where he's standing, those type of things. So all in all, it was a brilliant all-round team performance. It's rare actually that all 3 phases of the game actually click at the same time, and I'm giving the offense a little bit of a pass by saying it clicked. I think it's clicked to the point of this is what the offense is going to be. Yes, you'd like to think that will improve a little bit with chemistry and time. Let's not forget in all of this, whatever his limitations are as a quarterback, this was still Brissett's first game with this group of players. So that will take time. I was really encouraged not just by Cooper being open, but by some of the other receivers that were open. A lot of criticism last year around Stefanski's play calling. There was nothing wrong with the play calling yesterday. People were wide open. It's going to be a case of execution over the course of the coming weeks if they can obviously improve that level of execution. But I thought defensively, we came as advertised, good pass rush. I thought the linebackers played well. Shout out to Anthony Walker in particular, who I wouldn't say I was that massively surprised that they re-signed him, but, I think, he seemingly took a step forward. He was flying all over the field. He snuffed out one screen in particular where he was in the backfield, and met McCaffrey sort of, literally just as he caught the ball. So I thought overall defensively it was a really, really, really good performance. Just a shame that we only picked Baker off the once because it felt like it was going to happen more than once in that first half in particular. I haven't got his first half stat line, but I'm pretty sure it was horrendous in the first half.
Well, he was horrendous in the first half, and it's the fourth quarter really that is the shocker. I'll just reel off this for you. So Baker led a fourth quarter comeback from 20-7 down to lead 24-23 with 1 minute 13 left. That's a shocking of itself. But Baker Mayfield then had a 158.3 passer rating in the fourth quarter, a perfect passer rating in the fourth quarter. Baker, Reagan, Mayfield.
And he still didn't win.
And he still didn't win. He still didn't win, thankfully. That obviously coming from, just being able to have the time. And I actually thought it was good game management from Kevin Stefanski as well. And that's my point that I want to drive on, seeing as Sean stole mine about the run blocking and the linebackers. I have gone to my third option, of which is game management. On the linebackers, by the way, if you watch the orange and brown reports, all 22, they have some fantastic videos about how the linebackers are moving in motion and helping out each other. By far the best room performance-wise yesterday, maybe with the running back room having a slight edge, but honestly, it's just poetry in motion to actually watch that. But yeah, in terms of game management, and I'll keep this brief, but on all phases, apart from the secondary towards the end, it just seemed to flow really well, even though the score remained at 0-0. We left a lot of points on the board, of which if we'd executed, we would have put ourselves in a much better position in that first half. We were running the clock down. We were stopping the run first by, loading the box and daring them to come at us. They did not come at us. We basically dared Baker to show us what he's got, of which in the first half was not enough. And then, like you said earlier, like we've all said, actually, it's about ensuring that when we do a pass play, it's around the down marker, it's complete, and it's safe. And that pretty much summed up what we were going for. We were going for field position. Our field position throughout the game, particularly in the first half, was, just a gift. Carolina were constantly within their 15-10. Cody Bajorquez had a great game, I thought, punting. We needed a good punter this season. Looks like we've got one from week one. Execute your field goals. Cade York, obviously, 4 from 4. Even without the last second field goal, it was still a fantastic rookie debut for him. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones moving the sticks. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt getting you into third and short situations. So, yeah, it was just a really nicely executed game from the Browns. And until the end, I wasn't really worried. It was only when, the Carolina sort of lit a fire up their asses that it was any kind of panic.
Yeah, to be fair, I think Owen said it earlier. I think it was a really strange feeling watching it yesterday because even going behind with a minute 13 left, there is just this like air of confidence now that we only need like 25 yards to have a crack at this field goal, which is just a ridiculous situation to find yourself in. But even on that game winner, we've talked about him enough. We should really give him his own moment on the podcast, particularly with his number one fan absent tonight on a Hollywood. So I hope you're enjoying yourself, Jen. But that 58-yarder, I know they don't do it on CBS. It's obviously Sunday Night Football, doesn't it? That tells you how good a kick is. It would have been good.
Oh, it was good from 68, apparently.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least 10 yards on it. It was just a phenomenal kick. And like you say, it rounded off what was a really impressive debut. Not just the field goals and everything, but, touchbacks and all of those kind of things. That often gets overlooked. But as you said, that starting field position is a real, asset to us. Although, like I said, I just thought it was really well managed throughout. I think, we probably got lucky on one call, which was the spike / fake spike, which I don't really know what Brissett was doing at the end there. That could have really cost us. And to be honest, by the letter of the law, it probably should have cost us. But with that being said, you know, they might have just trotted out Cade York from 73 and had a go. Who knows? So we could have been talking about an even more incredible story. I just thought, like I say, overall, I thought it was really, really good, really well played. It's a lovely feeling to be 1-0, isn't it? You know, none of us have been 1-0 as Browns fans. So, you know, to be 1-0 is just an incredible feeling, as stupid as that sounds to see that you have a 100 record. I'll take that all day long.
Yeah. Right, chaps, we will discuss what 1-0 means a little later on when we just talk about the NFL. But for now, we're going to look ahead to week 2. We've got with us Andres from the Jets UK podcast, and we'll be back with you in just a moment.
Probably should have went to him on the last play. In stride, OBJ. He comes back to MetLife and does this. How about it? Odell Beckham Jr. 89-yard touchdown. For him to do this.
No press man-to-man. It's a free release. And when you give one of the most explosive players in the NFL a free release.
Yeah, the thing is that I had this idea of doing these highlights as a way of breaking up a little bit, getting the guest in, you know, seamlessly and all the rest of it. And then I realised that the players that are making these plays are either going to be Baker Mayfield or a wide receiver that's no longer with the team. If I'm lucky, it's Garrett or Chubb, but otherwise I'm using old players, and it almost sends about a feeling of ennui. But that's not what we're on about here. Andres, really nice to meet you, buddy. Thank you for coming on this evening. I guess that realistically, before we talk about ourselves and week 2 in our matchup, how are you feeling after last night, but also just the Jets in general from this off season? Obviously, you've done quite a lot of business. Just looking to see as to where your head's at, really, with it being so early in the season.
It's been quite a long day. First of all, thanks for having me. It's always it's good to jump on with other UK fans of other teams. We're a passionate bunch, and we're dedicated to the sport that we have to commit to it with the time differences and all that. So it's always
absolutely
great to connect with everybody. I love this part of the week of the season of speaking with people from other teams. It's just been a long day in terms of conversating with my podcast hosts, co-hosts. There's been a divide. We recorded our recap today, a bit explosive, to be honest, because I'm on the more positive side, and we have 4 hosts, but only one made it, and he's like the most negative. So we're like two sides of the spectrum, and he was doomsday. It's all over, and I'm like, it's week 1. It wasn't great. It's what it is. It was. Ravens are a good team. You guys know the Ravens. You know Lamar.
Just a bit, mate.
Of course. They're a good team. They actually line up the way that their strengths and their strengths really go against our weaknesses. We knew it would probably be the worst matchup. The Bills are another talented team that we're going to face, obviously, but the Ravens are probably the worst matchup in terms of going from what we struggled last year with, in terms of how we would respond to that this year. This year going into trying to improve where we were from last year. They were the worst matchup, and we slowed them down. They weren't explosive against us, but the offense just never showed up. The offensive line is a mess because we've lost injuries. We've had Mekhi Becton drop out, then we brought in Dwayne Brown. He's been durable so far in the last few years, but he got injured as well, just 2 weeks after we signed him. So he's out for probably 4 or 5 weeks at the least. And so you're then putting a 4th-round rookie tackle there, and actually he was like the best he was the best guy. He actually played okay. The rest of the line were all over the place. It was I would expect them to bounce back. The good thing is that the guy that you would have the most question marks about actually did okay. And the guys who you expect more of didn't show up, and you expect them to eventually show up. So it's just a frustrating day because Joe Flacco is just not the guy that you want to have that back there when you've got offensive line issues. He's just got he's an absolute statue back there, and it just made it impossible to run an offense with any consistency because the Ravens were just getting so much pressure up the middle, and with any QB, never mind someone like a statue like Flacco at this stage of his career. I mean, he was never a guy with that much mobility, but at this stage of the career, even more so. So yeah, it's frustrating, but there was a lot of positives to take by. You mentioned the team and how they've been, how we've kind of brought in a lot of players. The draft is quite. We had a pretty exciting draft, and the rookies, the three first round rookies, all showed out really well. Sauce Gardner, he looks very, very, very special. Just from very small sample size, but just from what we're seeing in terms of the off season, in terms of the preseason, and now in his first game, he did a really good job on Mark Andrews. He was assigned Mark Andrews in his first game in the NFL, and he kept him pretty quiet. And the only time that Mark Andrews actually did anything was when Sauce wasn't on him. So he's looking pretty good. And then Garrett Wilson looks very special at the wide receiver unit, and Jermaine Johnson looked pretty good. He got his first sack as well. So there are positives to take. The guys that we brought in from free agency look pretty good. It's just it all comes down to the QB. It all comes down to the O-line and the QB. And if you can't keep up the score, the defense can only do so much to keep you in the game. And the running game doesn't matter if you can't make. You're not always going to get success in the run, and if they don't respect the pass. So that's just basically summing up where we've been. Some have been really out on the Jets, like Salah and Joe Douglas have to. They have to what they're on the hot seat straight away. Or like it's one game.
I don't think that you can do that after a game against the Ravens where no one gave you a shot in hell.
Well, that's the thing. Like the NFL, you always last year, for example, we were against the Bengals when they were on that hot streak. Mike White comes in for Zach Wilson. No one expects it. You never know with the NFL, but we expect when you go through the wins and losses before the season. The Ravens was a loss for everybody. We're like, there's a few people who hoped because you're like 9/11 in New York. Maybe we ride a wave of optimism, but it was a loss for most people. And we're expecting, most of us who got our heads screwed on, we think we're like a 7-8 win. That's what we want to be right now to show progress from where we were last year. We want to be, that 7-8 win mark, around that 500 mark. It would be great, which means that you're going to lose a bunch of games as well. And the Ravens was going to be one of them. And we actually, we made them look like, they struggled in parts. They did get the running game going, which is something for the Ravens. And we made Lamar throw the ball, and he did well. He threw the ball, and we had one break, got a bit of a mix up in the back end, and that's where Bateman got the big throw that you probably see the highlights for. But other than that, there's a lot of positives to take, even though there was a lot of negatives as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that whatever you can take from a game against the Ravens is something to hold on to. And I think the fact that you'd kept them out the end zone for so long as well is something to be commended as well. I think it was a 10-3 at the half or something like that. I think it was quite low scoring at half time. And then
it was,
Yeah, and then they just got a couple of touchdowns in the second half. When you consider where you were a year ago, I think that you'd have probably taken 24 points conceded against the Ravens. You'd have given both hands for that probably. And if you had if you'd had Wilson, then potentially it's a different story.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zach still, the whole thing that with Joe coming in was that, Joe's experience. So while he doesn't have the mobility of Zach, he has the experience. So there's like swings and roundabouts going there. But, in a game like yesterday where the O-line can't hold up, Zach's mobility to get out the pocket, his ability to get out the pocket, not just on escaping, but actually on rollouts to kind of divide split the field in half to make things, change things up a bit, give different looks. That's what Zach can do from an athletic point of view would have changed the landscape of the game in terms of what Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, could have called. And he was just stuck with keeping Flacco in the pocket. And the pocket was just swallowed. Everybody was just pressing right in every single time, right into his face. It wasn't even break. It was just everyone was just flying back. The O line were going right back onto his lap every single play. It was just like impossible. It was impossible.
Yeah. Also, Owen, I could see your face there just before you put in your question. I could see your face as soon as I said that Zach Wilson could have changed. I didn't mean a change of result. I meant maybe they got into the end zone, for example. So maybe made it a little closer because 24 points against any team. We've seen this. We've seen in week one teams that should not be anywhere near teams as long as you get the points, it's a different story. That's all I meant by that. Before your eyes bulge out any further.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I think you would have had more success because the playmakers that we have, we're quite confident in terms of the playmakers. I think Elijah Moore is a very good receiver. Garrett Wilson looks very, very good, and you would expect that from the 10th overall pick, and he looks the business. Corey Davis, he's never been the guy who's going to be a number one guy, but he's a solid receiver as a number two/3 guy. So there's people there that can get it done if the QB can play efficiently, and the running backs Michael Carter, Breece Hall, are both very talented. So the pieces are there, and I think once the O line starts to gel, they've basically we've had not just the injuries to the tackles, but we also had like kind of nicks and bruises to the other guys. So they've been in and out of the lineup, all of them, like a lot of them during the preseason and the training camp. So they've had, I think, before Dwayne Brown went out, I think it was like they had all as a five. The five of them had only had like 25 snaps together in terms of reps at all, whether it be in the games or in training camp. So it was basically they need to gel, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks that'll happen. And when Zach comes back in 2 or 3 weeks, the line will be better for him, and we'll start to see a little bit more of what we can be as a team.
Yeah, so the reason why Josh was laughing then is because we've had a little bit of a running joke on this podcast since we started that Josh
I can't believe you're about to dob me in here. I have been nothing but a consummate neutral at this point.
Josh is probably the biggest Jets hater I've ever met in my life.
I'm really not.
So I am actually really high on the Jets this year. Like you said, I think those weapons are really, really exciting. And that's what I was going to actually bring up, because I think I've said it on the podcast before when we were doing our schedule game that this Jets game would have been a real challenging one for us, I think, in what the Jets can bring to the table had Zach Wilson actually been available. I think Flacco being there obviously hurts them immensely, but yeah, I think it's good. Like, I wanted to hear a little bit more about that wide receiver room, because coming into the draft last year and this year, we've obviously had our sights set on wide receiver quite early. So yeah. I've seen plenty of Elijah Moore, seen plenty of Garrett Wilson, and they were both two players that I was really, really high on. So yeah, for me, I'm really pleased that Zach Wilson isn't available for this game, because that tandem, those wide receivers and Zach Wilson would have worried me a little bit, although one of our strengths is our cornerback room as well. But
yes,
yeah,
I do think that the receivers, like I say, even with Flacco, if the line can give him any time, because I think he can do some business if he's given time. He just hasn't got the ability to make things up when things break down, and that's what happened. Everything broke down, and he didn't have the ability. So if the line can miraculously, gel over the first weekend, they can get things working where they give them a little bit of time. It could be more difficult than you think. I have to go back. We're right on the heels of last week's game. We're going to be previewing this game later in the week, and as I'll obviously look into you guys, I'll look at the performance against the Panthers, and I'll be able to give a better estimation of where I'm at. Obviously, I've got less confidence in the Jets after yesterday, but I still think that I think there's a lot of talent on the team, and if they can come together, we can give most people a game. I really think so. I'm not being a homer when I say that.
Yeah, just to jump on here at this point, we have a very familiar face dropping in with a little Facebook comment here. Jen on her holidays at the moment, but still taking the time to listen to the pod at least. Agreeing with you there, Owen, on the Jets hype. Adored Zach Wilson in college. He just needs some time. Yeah, I think that's a sentiment that quite a few of us share here. Even I am the supposed Jets hater. Look, I'm not a hater. I just enjoy playing the Jets because of the fact that Browns more often than not win.
God, is this to do with the whole Darnold Baker Mayfield thing? That was like that I had a few situations with some friends who are Browns fans where that whole rivalry of like you skipped on Darnold and took Baker, and there was insecurity. And I was saying his insecurities about
trust me,
picking one
I get
guy.
that. I get why
yeah.
you'd ask it. No, I just enjoy playing because it's something of which Browns and Jets seem to happen almost annually for quite a while, and it was always one which I'm like, oh, get to play the Jets, and as someone that was just craving wins, it was one of which you circled, thinking we can actually get something from this one, because we were always around the same level. So I've always enjoyed it. But no, I can see as to why Owine's keeping me honest. Anyway, let's get back on track, mate. Give us your thoughts on this one on Sunday and a prediction from you before we let you go.
Yeah, so I mean, when I look at again, I have to look at the film in more detail, but just from knowing the Browns, generally the roster and looking at it anyway, having a decent knowledge of the Browns roster, the cornerback room and the defensive backfield is going to, it's going to be a challenge to see how our wide receivers, the ones I mentioned, do against those guys if they can get open, because that's another thing. They need to get open so that Flecker can get the ball out quicker, because if the line's not working, then the receivers have to get open quicker. So that's going to be key. If we can get the running game going, it could help out as well. So yeah, that's what I see on that side of the ball. And then with the defensive line, obviously Myles Garrett scares the life out of me with what happened, and the rest of the line, of course. But yeah, Myles Garrett is the headliner there, and obviously does scare me. But I do feel that and so on the other side, on the defensive side of the ball, I think if we can get the defensive line, if we can stop the run again, because you guys are that double-headed monster at the running back position, two very talented running backs. If we can slow you guys down just a little bit, maybe, and put it more on Brissett, it gives us a puncher's chance. And our defensive line is very talented. I think Quinnen Williams was ranked as the number one defensive lineman this week, PFF, for whatever you can qualm at PFF, but he had a good game. We knew he did, and from the stats he was graded number one defensive lineman this week in the NFL. So he's looking really good, and so that's our strength, is the defensive line, and then the two cornerbacks. Our weakness really is the safety position. It's just a point, and that's what that big play, that big busted play from last week was evident. So I think that
go that far anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe that's one thing to consider. I do feel that it's going to be a closer game than we had against the Ravens. I think they're going to come out and respond better. But I do think that at the end, I think the running game, you guys will have more than what they had with the injuries that the Ravens had. It was just on Lamar, keeping Lamar in check, but it's a bit difficult when you've actually got the running backs itself are two talented guys, rather than what we faced on Sunday with the Ravens being banged up. So I do feel that that's going to be the key of just not being able to really stop you guys. I would say that the prediction I have for the game is something probably like 17-20 Browns.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
A close one, but you guys will outlast us probably.
Yeah, Vegas currently has it as 5.5 in favor of the Browns. So yeah, probably something about that seems pretty respectable. I've probably got something around the same, but we'll touch on that later on in the show. Andres, thank you very much, buddy, for coming on. I look forward to coming on to yours in a couple of days' time to offer some Browns perspective, the other side, to help you have a bit more fear in Garrett and Co. potentially.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me. It's been have a good rest of the show.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andres. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Fantastic. So that's Andres' view there. I think that
now.
I can breathe now. I was always fine. It's you I worry about more than anything else. Or I'm just dobbing me in like that. God, I'm going to end up having no friends at this point. I have to ask you guys to schedule all the hosts and just say that I'm not coming on if that's the case.
Nah, it's just a chance. You're all right now.
Yeah, I've got to go on that show in a couple of days' time, so I need to at least have some flipping stock to me. Let's do what we did last week, folks. Just a quick run through of our keys to the game. I can see that we're 10 minutes before the hour, so we'll run through these quite quickly. For me, Andres actually touched on it quite a lot there towards the end. It was being able to establish the run with a better rush defense faced up against us. Realistically, Carolina sort of, they didn't fold. They just completely, allowed the gates to open. I don't think we're going to get that this time round. Baltimore were stuffed for 63 yards off 21 carries. That's an average of 3 per carry. For the entire game. Mosley and Williams combined for 17 tackles between them. Yeah, that's a lot of tackles. To be able to boast on your defensive line. From what I saw from the highlights, they were looking a lot faster and generally a lot better in their tackling as well. So if we are going to establish the run, our blocking needs to be just as good, if not better. I'd like to see a bit more from Jedrick Wills this week as well, because there's quite a few highlights already of which I've seen where he just gives up on his block, especially in pass protection, of which caused a couple of pressures. So yeah, for me, it's going to be about the offensive line again, being able to deal with allowing us to establish the run, because it's going to be incredibly important. Sean, how about you, bud? What for you is your key to the game?
I think we touched on it earlier, didn't we? That field position was massively important. Time of possession was massively important yesterday. That is, there's no big mystery to this. That is the most effective way to win, particularly with the offense that we're going to be running. If we can get up early, let's make Joe Flacco throw it for another 59 attempts. You just heard Andres there say he's got no ability. He's not really all that great. Yet they still had 59 passing attempts on Sunday. If we can get a stat line like that at the end of the game, I think we'll be in a really, really good position. If you actually look at what their running game delivered on Sunday and the limited usage that it had, Michael Carter went for 60 yards off just 10 carries. The running game was actually showing some real signs of efficiency. And he's one of my bugbears, really. And I'll say that as a fan of a team that's obviously got a very good running game. But whenever a team goes down by double scores, it just becomes just an all-out aerial attack. And if your aerial attack's no good, you're surely better off running the ball and getting 5 and 6 yards a time as opposed to going nowhere through the air. So I do find it a bit of a strange one. For me, like I say, if the defense can play as well as it did, those wide receiver weapons are encouraging, in terms of Davis, Wilson, Moore. But, Flacco's not as good a quarterback as what Baker Mayfield is, in my opinion. So I think we are going against a much lower level in terms of the opposition quarterback. It's the home opener, so if we can get up early, get the dog pound rocking, I'd be expecting, a positive result on Sunday.
Yeah, I'd say that, especially considering the mismatch that Flacco would be, if you can keep him passing, that would be excellent. And obviously that was our game plan last week as well. Well, this week as well. Evidently by the fact that we were able to stop Christian McCaffrey for nigh on 3 and a bit quarters. So yeah, I can absolutely see why you've put that one in there. But Wine, your thoughts for us, please. I believe that you're going to talk to us about our secondary.
Yeah, so I touched on it just now. I really like the Jets wide receiving core. Like them when they were in college, especially Moore and Wilson. So yeah, can we match up well against them? Yeah, I think we can. Like Sean said, it's all about Flacco and whether he can get them the ball first. They are dangerous after the catch though, especially Moore and Wilson. Wilson, I think, forced about 4 or 5 missed tackles off his first 3 catches last week, including breaking a couple of DB's ankles on one of them. So yeah, they're the ones to be concerned about for me. And I think the biggest thing is we need to score enough points that, them having their little moments won't matter as much. So I think if we get up to 26, well, low 20s, mid 20s, I think that's probably enough to see us over the line again. So that's the key for me is getting to that sort of mid 20 range, and I think we'd be absolutely fine.
Yep, no, I definitely don't disagree with that. And the secondary, I mean, I brought it up obviously in the in the review of yesterday. The secondary needs to be able to prove that that they can hang around as well, and be able to lock this down. Because if we can do what you said first, Sean, which is make Flacco go to the air and then lock that down, then you're halfway to keeping the score incredibly low, which is what you need in order for our offense to move freely. So, yes, all good with that. Let's move on to predictions then, folks. We'll start off, obviously, with the Browns-Jets game. We'll start like we did last week with some props. So I'll give you an under-over or a either-or, and you just give me your answer on the quickfire. So, Sean, Brissett, under or over 175 passing yards?
Over.
Oof, even despite the 145, I think it was this week. Owain, how about you?
Got to go over for me, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go under again. I feel like 150-ish might get it done. I feel like we might actually run our way through again and just see if our line can hold it. Hunt, under or over 100 all-purpose yards, Owain?
That's tough for me because I think the run game is going to be a lot harder this week. But I think if we are to get Brissett over 200 yards, I think he's going to be important in the pass game. I'm still going to take the under though. Just.
Oof. Okay, Sean.
Over.
Yeah, I'm going over as well. I feel like Hunt's going to be one of the X factors in this early part of the season. I'm just trying to see as to what he got to yesterday, actually. 46 plus 24. 70. Oh, yeah, I did maybe set it just a little too high, but I'm still going to take the over. Sean, who gets more yards, DPJ or Cooper?
Cooper.
Owain?
I'm going to go DPJ because I think Sauce will be on Cooper. So, yeah, I'll go DPJ.
Yeah, I'm going DPJ as well. I think I'd go DPJ most of the season, especially while Brissett's under centre. I think that he's proving to be he's going to be the value receiver that you see in a lot more space. And also, if he doesn't even have space, it's fine because it's a short yardage situation. Cooper will throw it Brissett will throw it practically on the floor, and DPJ will somehow find a way to catch it. And then final one for you both: force more than one interception, yes or no?
Yep.
Nods on both. I'm going to say yes on that one as well, just because of what we heard earlier from Andre about Flacco, and that plus our pass rush. It's got to mean trouble, really.
I don't think he's going to want to take many sacks as he's getting on now.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to want Myles Garrett tackling him too often. So I think Myles Garrett starts to get pressure on him. I think we'll see some rushed and errant throws.
Yeah. Right. Win, loss, and your scoreline. Now, I'd just like to preface this by saying that last week I said 2-point win with a last-second Cade York field goal. That's exactly what happened.
There were 8 seconds left.
Just
want to let that percolate.
I'll have to go back and listen to last week because, as we know, you are good at fabricating what happened in previous weeks.
Yeah, say you please get it's either 2 or 3. I'm pretty sure it's 2 because I went by what I got on Madden. That's what I went by.
You did, yeah, you did.
So, and it was 2 points in Madden. So I'm hoping at the very least I got the same. So I am going to say a win by 9.
I'll go 23-15.
Okay, win by 8. Sean?
Yeah, I'm much more positive than you two. 26-10 Browns.
26-10. So I haven't actually worked out the scoreline. I just think by 9. So let's go 24-13. No, that's the other way around, isn't it? 24-15. Does that work?
Hedging his bets again. Look, hedging his bets.
I was going to say, does that work? 24. I want it to be 24 on our end. So that
15.
would mean 15. 15. So that's just a bunch of field goals. Yeah, I'm all right with that. Let's go. And then let's go with some quick fire pick sixes. We're all part of the Pick Six League for Believeland British. Yeah, thank you everyone who joined in for that, by the way. We got up to 20 players in that, which means that I am giving away a Browns hat. We got over the 15 I asked for. Currently top of the leaderboard for 410 yards one. Third in the Believeland Brits one, and definitely above you two so far. but it's only week one. It's only week one. It's practically practice. Chargers Chiefs.
I took the Chargers, I think, in this one.
No, okey-doke. I'm going to say Chiefs. I think that Chiefs are on fire so far. Finns Ravens.
Fins.
Ravens.
Wow, split again. I'm going to say Ravens. Commanders Lions.
I think I took the Commanders.
Lions.
I'm picking Lions as well.
I might be going to look really, really clever, really, really stupid.
Oh, it's fine, because what you do is that after this, you change a few of the picks afterwards as well, just so you can keep that pick'em league high, and then you can come back being like, yeah, mate, got like 13 this week.
No,
even though we listen back to this and just like, well, that's 3 L's to start. Cardinals Raiders.
Go on, Sean. I'm gonna check what I've put in the.
I've gone Raiders.
I've gone Raiders as well.
I've gone Cardinals.
Now, Owain, have you picked the Jags for Colts Jags?
I have, yeah. Of course.
Yes, I knew he would. I knew he would. That's why I put this one in there. I've gone Colts.
Right. Can we speak just a smidge about those games yesterday? Because I did actually take a very keen interest in that.
You have exactly 30 seconds.
Jags looked really good, but fluffed their lines in the red zone a good 4 or 5 times first half.
Mm-hmm.
Colts looked dreadful.
20 seconds left.
Lost to the Giants, who were, in my opinion, one of the top 3 weakest teams in the whole league.
The Titans looked very comfortable until the end, though.
They lost to the Giants.
Week one. Look,
I'm way more encouraged about that bet I took after yesterday.
I mean, by all means, but still, Colts to beat Jags. I'm not listening to it. Sean?
I've got the Jags.
Of course you have. Appease the Welshie. Patriots Steelers. Now, this one's tighter than you think.
Yeah,
do you know what? I had got the Steelers until the TJ Watt news. I think that is such a massive, massive injury for them. I still think they'll find enough to get it done. I'll stick with the Steelers. I wasn't impressed with the Patriots at all. But that is a massive, massive blow for them. Good news for us. You never want to see any players injured, obviously, but let's be honest, from a Browns perspective, the fact that we're playing them next week or 2 weeks' time, that makes that game considerably easier to game plan for. So I'll stick with the Steelers.
As a heads up, news-wise, just before we hear Owain's pick on that one, TJ Watt is not yet ruled out for the season. He is having a second and third opinion tomorrow on the severity of his pectoral muscle.
I think sort of tells you that the first one has told him he's done, and he's looking for something to tell him he's not, probably.
Yeah, there is apparently there were whispers going around this afternoon to say that it could well have just been a pull and not a full-on tear.
Okay.
So that would have ruled him out for about 6 weeks instead of obviously the entire season. But if other professionals say that he needs surgery, he will be out at least until the middle to end of December. And that's if you're on the optimistic side, depending, of course, on what team you support.
Yeah. It'll depend whether they're in the playoff mix or not as well by that stage.
Exactly, because there's no way you risk yourself. No. And with that, Owain, I hope that you've had that time to allow your decision to percolate and you've decided to come over to the light side and pick the Patriots.
Yeah, I have had a look at what I've picked in our pick'em. I did go Steelers, and I'm going to stick with the Steelers, but I'd be smashing the under in that game.
Yeah, so I'm going Patriots, which means it sounds like between us three there is no consensus. Last week there was a lot of consensus.
Does that mean that me and you have got the opposite pick on every single one?
I believe so. Of which does mean that
Takes
next
the
week
fight.
I could look a right fool. I've come out week one confidence, all
One of us
in the name of entertainment as host. And I could have egg on my face by next week, but I promise you that if so, I will serve it with a copious amount of humble pie. How about that? And with that, folks, we've reached yet another end to the Believeland Brits podcast. Thank you very much for listening or watching along with us. Remember, you can follow us at Believeland Brit, also on Facebook, so Twitter, Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel. If you go through to our link tree, that's linktr.ee/Believeland Brits, you will see links to all of our various podcast locations, the YouTube channel, our Twitter, Facebook, the website as well, full10yards.co.uk/Browns. Remember to also tune into the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, of which myself and Sean are about to switch over and do right now to talk about the NFL Week 1 entire. And yeah, apart from that, thank you very much for joining. Owain, Sean, cheers for being part of it once again. Jen, I hope you're enjoying your hollybobs. I know that you're currently listening in because I can see the little icon saying 1 there, and I know it's you. So cheers for that. And until next week, this has been the Believeland Brits podcast.